Hello, my name is Rich Howard, owner of Architectural Builder Supply. This video is to bring you a closer look at the Bommer number LB4310C-454-603. This is a Bommer single acting spring hinge. Trying to get the camera to focus on that hinge. Might be a bit reflective. This is a Bommer single acting spring hinge, full mortise, contract grade, lube bearing, steel base, zinc plated hinge. Okay, let's dissect that part number. First of all, the LB stands for lube bearing. That is a concealed maintenance free bearing construction from Bommer. The 4310 is a reference to the general pattern or template or profile of this hinge, meaning it's a square corner hinge. It is a template pattern on the screw holes. This sort of crescent shape is called template pattern. Okay, it means that it's a single acting full mortise spring hinge as well. Now the C stands for contract grade, and that means on this hinge your leaf thickness is 134 thousandths. So you've got residential weight, and that would be about 119 thousandths on the hinge like this, something in that range. You've got standard weight, standard duty commercial, 134 thousandths. Then you can do heavy weight, which you would not get in a spring hinge, but that would be 180 thousandths thick. So this is considered standard duty commercial, or heavy duty residential, it's also called. Title or calling it name aside, if your preparation, if your mortise in the door and frame are 434 thousandths, well, the C version is what you need rather than just the 4310. Okay, the C makes it the thicker standard weight hinge. Now the 454, that is a reference to the size, and you can get this hinge in several, let me get my tape measure. Okay, with the size 454, that means that it's 4.5 inches tall and it's 4 inch wide. It's critical to understand that the height is the first dimension on a hinge like this. You would not call this 4 by 4.5. This is 4.5 high, 4 wide. It's the opposite of the way that a door is typically sized. Don't know why, I can't tell you, but I can tell you that that's important to do it that way. You don't want to mix those dimensions up, especially on a hinge that's not square. Now, the 603, that means two things. That means that it is a steel-based hinge, okay, and it means that it is zinc plated. Zinc plating is going to be very similar to a satin sort of chrome, even though it's a bit shinier, but more critically is it is significantly more corrosion resistant, rust resistant than a typical finished hinge. People will use these hinges in an exterior application, coastal area, let's say, where you cannot get your hands on solid stainless steel spring hinges, or paying for a solid stainless steel spring hinge is not an option. So zinc coating is going to go a lot further than just a typical, brass plated, prime coat sort of finish. If it's exterior and you're looking for a chrome finish and you're not matching anything exactly, anyway, that knuckle's not, is going to be complementary to either satin chrome or even a polished chrome. Go with the 603. It's a really great value for the dollar in terms of corrosion resistance. Okay, full mortise. You can see from the swag on the hinge leaf here that when the leaves are brought parallel, they're meant to be mortised flush to the edge of the door and frame. That makes it a full mortise hinge. There is a link below this video to the template, and the template shows everything important dimensionally about the hinge that we've not already covered, but really that's a reference to the location of the screw holes. And if you're not sure if what you're replacing matches this template pattern, by all means refer to the template and compare that against your existing so that you can eliminate any guesswork in terms of getting the wrong material. And speaking of those screw holes, screws are included in a complementary finish. You're going to get wood screws and metal screws. Now, it is a spring hinge, like we said before. It is a contract grade spring hinge, meaning that it's 134 thousandths leaf thickness. This spring hinge you can use interchangeably with a non-spring hinge that is also 4 inch wide. Okay, so that wouldn't be a problem. Here's why that's important to state. That is important to state because there is a chart below this video showing how many spring hinges you need per door. So they're assuming that you're dealing with doors only up to 3 foot by 7 foot. That's for sure. Anything bigger than that, you're really better off looking at hydraulic control over a door, a surface-mounted door closer, concealed door closer, but something with hydraulic control. If you got a door up to 85 pounds, Bomber recommends 2 of these spring hinges. 110 pounds or thereabouts, go with 3 spring hinges. Now, I'm a fan of all spring hinges, and it's not for the obvious reason, but it's really for the fact that having installed them, maintained them, replaced them, specified them, I know through experience that having more spring hinges rather than less on a door gives you a greater probability of predictable, reliable door operation. Spring hinges are used, obviously, when you want the door to close behind you. You've opened the door, you want it to close automatically. But they can also be used in fire-rated applications whereby code requires not only self-latching, the door must latch into the frame, but it has to be self-closing. And if you can't self-close a fire-rated door, you don't have a fire-rated door. So especially in the event where you have a fire-rated door, you want to consider having ample spring power. This is non-handed. It can be used on a left-hand or a right-hand door. But when you get this installed and need to set the tension, which we'll go over in a moment. Let's go over it now. Then we'll talk more about the quantity of spring hinges. Your order is going to include a tension rod and a tension pin, which is right there. That silver pin. This order happens to have 2 hinges, so there are 2 tension pins in the package. So the anatomy of this hinge is that this item up here is called a tension collar. There's not one down here. Install the hinge with the tension collar up and insert the tension rod into one of the holes. Turn the tension collar clockwise after you get it installed. And as you turn it clockwise, you reveal new additional holes, and it's into one of those new holes that you insert the tension pin. Now, start with the hinge at the top, then the middle, then the bottom. Start from the top. The spring hinge needs to overcome that negative energy of the door opening. It needs to get the door moving from a standstill. It needs to overcome the air pressure. It needs to overcome the friction of the latch bolt hitting the strike plate. All of that conspires to ask a spring hinge do a lot of work. I have found an application where I was underpowered in the spring department. While I could get the door obviously opened and then get it moving, I'm not able to store enough energy to get that door reliably all the way to the closed position and latched. You could have an air pressure condition. In the summer, the windows and doors are open, and that door will not require as much generally to close the door, or maybe it will require more. In the winter, the opposite condition is true. So when you have additional spring hinges on the door, you can better tailor the reliability and the predictability of the operation of the closing of the door. I liken it to a tugboat. They don't go very fast, but they pull a lot of weight. And when you've got multiple spring hinges sharing the job of 2 or even 1, you have a better chance of not oversetting the tension on those spring hinges, sharing that work equally among more spring hinges so that you can accomplish a more reliable application. Like I said before, I'm not a fan of spring hinges. I think hydraulic control is the way to go. However, there are instances when a hydraulic surface-mounted door closer is impractical or impossible. You could have an attached garage in a home and it could be 20-minute rated, and as the home is being built, that door has to be self-closing. And it's not practical to have a door closer in those applications, and spring hinges is what you'll see. Now, a hinge that's 4.5 by 4, that 4.5 by 4 is really a size that you're going to see most commonly on aluminum frames and wood doors, although the square corner is odd for an aluminum frame. 4 wide for sure is 1 3/4 doors. You could have an 1 3/4 door that gets a lot of use. When comparing this 4.5 by 4 against a 4 by 4, the 4.5 tall will be significantly greater at handling higher volume use, etc. It's difficult to make an argument to use a smaller hinge because that extra ½ inch gives you a lot more ability to cycle through a much greater amount of use. So where this exactly is going to be used, I'm not sure, but those factors conspire to tell me that it might be higher volume use. It could be an aluminum situation because that 4-inch versus a 4.5 just brings that axis of pivoting in closer to the face of the door and frame, a 1/4 inch. But some people really want that sort of look is the bottom line on a spring hinge. Available in several different finishes. Okay, all your brasses, your bronze, your chromes, satin, polished, black japanned, prime coat, oil rub bronze, etc. And Bommer has a comprehensive offering of spring hinges, not only the typical contract sort of application, but residential, specifically residential. 3.5 inch, 4 inch, 4.5 inch. Last thing I'd like to point out to you is the Bommer logo, and right above it it says Made in USA, a fact that Bommer is quite proud of, as am I to represent them. Any questions on the Bommer, number LB4310-454-603 single acting zinc plated spring hinge, or any other Bommer product, please feel free to reach out to us.